We're heading back to 1978, folks, and we're going to talk about a Chuck Norris action movie. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well out there, and today we're going to head back to 1978 for a Chuck Norris action film. But before we head to 78, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here, I would appreciate that. Today we're going to prove that good guys do wear black, because we're going to talk about the Chuck Norris film, Good Guys Wear Black. Now, this film came out in June of 1978. It's rated PG. It's an hour and 35 minutes long, had a budget of $1 million, and upon release, it made $18.3 million. Now, this movie was directed by Ted Post. Ted Post has a long list of credits to his name. He used to do a lot of TV work way back when. He worked with Clint Eastwood a few times. He did Hang 'em High in 68. He did Magnum Force in 73. Which many consider the best Dirty Harry movie. I really like that one as well. He also did Beneath the Planet of the Apes as well. He did that film and many, many other films. If you check him out in the IMDb, his list of credits are immense. And he does a decent job here with this film on a low budget of just $1 million. Now, Chuck Norris plays John T. Booker, a kick-ass name. And he was coming off of Breaker in 77. And a year after this, he would do A Force of One, which is going to be my next review because it's on a double 2-disc DVD set that I bought to do these films. And Archer is in this film as Margaret, and she portrays herself as a reporter, and we find out she's a lawyer with the State Department trying to track down who has set up these guys or is killing them off. And Lloyd Hines plays Murray Saunders, and he's a CIA operative who is friends with John T. Booker. Now, this movie has a lot of same parallels as a movie that would put Chuck Norris on the map in the 80s, Missing in Action. Chuck Norris is a part of this elite Army commando group that's going into Vietnam to find POWs. Him and his men go in, but they were set up, and they get ambushed by the Viet Cong, and a lot of the guys get killed. Their transport is not there to pick them up the way they were, but they do make it out, the ones that survived. And they make it back. We jump ahead 5 years later. And John is testing Porsches out. Why, I don't know. But he's testing Porsches around this track, and he gets called away. He gets taken away with this woman because he's teaching this class on the Vietnam War, or giving this lecture on the Vietnam War because he's a part of it. And Ann Archer's character approaches him and asking him questions, and she portrays herself as a reporter. Later on, he finds out that she's actually a lawyer that works for the government, trying to find out what is going on and what kind of cover-up is going on, because whoever set John's men up back in Vietnam is now automatically having his men killed. And basically, Margaret and John team up and try to go off to find his men and warn them unsuccessfully, because everybody that show up to warn ends up getting shot and killed. And they start piecing it together. Margaret gets killed in a bombing on a plane. She's flying up to San Francisco to track down the lead, and the plane blows up. And there's a cool scene where John gets in a fight with this guy who was the assassin, and he's driving at him on a car. It's cool stunt work too, but Chuck Norris comes running towards the car, does a kick through the windshield as the car's coming towards him, and ends up killing the guy. It's a cool scene. It's silly, but it's a very cool scene. There's some cool stunt work in this film for sure. And it's not as action heavy as you would think, although they only had a $1 million budget. So it's not like this was a big budget film. And eventually we find out that they were set up by this guy who was high up in the government, who was about to be named Secretary of State. And Murray and John go to his house, confront him, and he's very sure of himself that he's going to get away with this, and nothing that he has done will ever come back and touch him. But John takes it upon himself to end up hijacking his motorcade, his one limousine that was going to take him to this press conference, and drive. A pretty cool scene, drives it off the road into the bay. John survives, and the guy does not, and that is pretty much the end of Good Guys Wear Black. What to like about this film? Well, Chuck Norris is not one of our best actors. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I've always liked Chuck Norris films. And it's always better if Chuck says less, if Chuck lets his actions speak for him. And in this one, he says a little too much. And you can tell, this is the beginning of his career. I mean, he's done some things, obviously the Bruce Lee stuff, the Octagon movie, and Breaker year before this. But this is really his first major starring role. And he had a heavy hand in producing it and, shepherding the script along for this film. And the less Chuck says is always the better. In later films, I think he realized that say less and just do speak with your actions and your facial expressions. And I've always liked Chuck Norris movies. I mean, they're not the greatest. None of his movies ever reached the heights of Stallone's movies or Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. But I've always liked Chuck Norris movies, and this one's okay. The acting, Chuck Norris is okay here, and Archer's really good. Everybody else, the actors overall are pretty good. Where the movie falls short, and it's probably budgetary reasons, I don't know if this has to do with the transfer on the DVD, because the daytime scenes look really good on this DVD, especially in my 4K player upscaling and on my 4K TV. But the night scenes, especially the raid in Vietnam to find the POWs, it looks awful. It's hard to see what's going on except for when there's an explosion. The way it's staged and the way it's shot, and again, I don't know if it was the transfer, but it's very dark and very hard to see what the hell is going on. And that was a bummer, because it's a big action set piece in the beginning of the film, and it's hard to decipher exactly what in the hell is going on. And it's actually not as action heavy as you would think for a Chuck Norris movie. It takes long periods of time to get to action. When it does happen, it's pretty good. I mean, Chuck gets in a couple of fights and gets to do his karate moves, and he looks good doing them, and it's shot pretty well by Ted Post. Ted Post has been around for a while and directed a lot of things. So he was, a journeyman director, but he does a nice job here for what he's given to do. The only scene I would really complain about directing-wise is that raid scene. I think I don't know if it's a transfer, but I still don't even think it's directed well, because it's hard to decipher what in the hell is going on. The story's interesting, but I don't think it's told in the best of ways, and maybe that's because the script's probably just not that good. Watching this film, I've seen this film a long, long time ago. I didn't remember most of it. At the end of the day, this is just an okay Chuck Norris vehicle. He definitely made better films later. This was an early effort. It was only $1 million film, and it ended up making $18.3 million, so it was a hit. Now, speaking of the release of this film, they had a hard time getting distribution, so what the makers of the film did, the producers did, was they would rent out theaters city to city and show the film, and Chuck Norris actually toured with the film. He would go city to city and do interviews and promote the film, and they ended up making $18.3 million. That's why A Force of One went into production fairly quickly after the release of this film. But this is definitely, grassroots success story for this film. And at the end of the day, it's an okay Chuck Norris vehicle. It's not the greatest movie. It's not the worst piece of shit I've ever seen. It's okay. At the end of the day, I would give Good Guys Wear Black a 6 out of 10. It's a middle of the road. It's okay. I think the acting's not that bad, and Archer's really, really good here. Some of the action, there's some cool stunt work in parts. It's a little slower in between, even though it's 1 hour and 35 minutes. Again, there's a lot of dead space in between the action scenes. And the story, probably, if it was written a little better, would have been more interesting. But at the end of the day, it's a middle-of-the-road effort. 6 out of 10 for Good Guys Wear Black. If you've ever seen this one, leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video. I greatly would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with a review for A Force of One. I've never seen that one, and I'm going to check that one out tonight, and I'll have a review next week for that one, and many other videos coming up. But until next time, bye.